What's up, guys? It's Mott here alongside Josh Davis. It is 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, meaning it is the Wednesday Link Live. Josh, good Wednesday evening. How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Listen, Philadelphia's 2-0, despite the fact that everyone in Eagle Land seems to think we're 0-2. It feels like we're a bad football team, according to social media and Twitter, although in reality, maybe we can debunk some of those myths and give Eagle fans a little bit of hope tonight.
I mean, I think so. Yes, I agree that there's, always a cause for concern, or sometimes you're tempering expectations,
Sure.
things like that. And I know we're going to get into Jason Kelce's comments as well, but yeah, there's positives you can look at it. We are 2-0, like you mentioned, and a lot of teams would love to be in that situation. So to say you've not played up to your level of standard, yet you still are 2-0, that's a win. I mean, no pun intended, but that is a win. You will take that as a definite positive.
Well, I think we should start, though, quickly with the cornerback situation. But we both did the shows yesterday talking about how they brought in the former Washington Commander, Pittsburgh Steeler cornerback. A lot of people immediately thought he was a slot fix, although in reality, as the stats showed, he's more of an outside cornerback. Bradbury, as you mentioned yesterday, seemingly okay with playing the slot. They played him a little bit there during training camp. Do you have major concerns with the Eagles secondary? Like, assuming Reed Blankenship plays on Monday night, so they basically have everybody but Avonte Maddox. Are you one of these people who think they got to go make a move, they have to change something up, or do you think the solutions are all there in-house?
I think currently they're in-house. That's a good question, and something I'm sure we're going to continue to talk about probably for the next couple weeks, even as we figure out, okay, who's the kind of option, the,
Yeah.
semi full-time option as far as the slot corner goes. This week is curious, and I know Desai mentioned it a little bit or alluded to it in his presser. But I mean, you're facing guys like a Mike Evans and a Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans has moved into the slot more often than he has in past years. So maybe it's a new wrinkle of the offense, but with guys like that, I mean, it doesn't. I don't mind it so much to say, hey, if James Bradbury, which all signs seem like he should be fine, I haven't heard anything alarming. We'll probably get official
Yeah.
reports over the next couple of days. But assuming that he's good to go from the concussion, then my number one vote, and I've said it a number of times, is have Bradbury there as the option for the slot, not full time. I know that he's an all pro on the outside. I've gotten millions of comments about that, and I understand it. Yes, he needs to be on the
Right.
outside more often. But if you have to move him inside a little bit, you know what? Hey, do that. See if Job can play a little bit better. But also, I am definitely in favor of why not throw Ricks out there, because we've seen him in the preseason. And yes, I know it's preseason, and I've had those same type of comments. But at the same time, against the Colts, I mean, you could argue that was the starting offense for the Colts. So it's not like he's going up against second, third, fourth string
Right.
guys. He's playing the starters there. So you're always going to have some weaknesses here or there. To me, I'm not ready to sound the alarms. There have been some guys that you're missing. Health is an issue and a concern. At the same time, you could argue, well, we are third to last in the league in terms of pass defense. So you got to get something figured out. I'll give you that. But, I think we pump the brakes for a second. We figure out what the guys can do, because Mario Goodrich, whether you like him, whether you hate him, whether you think it's a good or bad option, he did get thrown into the fire. He got thrown to the wolves. Justin Jefferson is not really the most favorite or likely matchup you want to go into if you're pressed into action. So give him a week. Desai seems to be hopeful. I can at least do that. I can at least go one more game. But if we're sitting here a week from now going, all right, well, it only got worse, there's no improvement from it,
Yeah.
then yeah, you probably have to go out there and make a splash.
Yeah, the problem is, what splash do you make, right? And I hear everything that you just said. Too would like to see Ricks get a little more run at the outside. I do understand why they didn't give him a lot. I mean, he had one snap. He did cover Justin Jefferson very well, which you and I both noted in our shows this week, in that one snap on Thursday night. But they're very scared about putting a rookie out there, whether it's Sidney Brown or Eli Ricks or one of these other undrafted free agent guys, Keely Ringo from the fourth round. They don't want them to make boneheaded rookie mistakes that cost you touchdowns. And normally, when you're on the defensive line, you can be a bonehead from a pass rusher perspective and not cost your football team 6 points. If you're one-on-one against Mike Evans and you're Eli Ricks and you make a boneheaded move because you're an undrafted free agent rookie and you cost them 6, it could cost you the game. And so while I would love to see Ricks get some more run, maybe later on in games if they can build up some leads, you saw that in the Viking game, then you go ahead and use him. But early on, I think the fear with both him and Sidney Brown is we love what we see, but there's a little bit of a concern that, they might make the mistake, which could cost you 6, which could cost you a game. In terms of who do you go
True.
get, I have no idea, honestly. The whole Buda Baker stuff, it's so tiring to talk about because it hasn't happened. He's on IR. You can't touch him for 4 weeks. Does he solve your issues, though, in terms of nickel and cornerback coverage? Kind
Eh,
of. Maybe. He's better, but is he that much better? I don't see a solution out there. I think Philadelphia has to take what they have, trust, like what you said, Bradbury can move when he needs to. You don't need to be in the slot every single down. Evans goes there, they go 3 wide, sure, go ahead and go in. But I think they got to build with what they have and also hope that the defensive front starts to get a little bit more pressure. They turned it up a notch against the Vikings, but we're still missing Hassan Reddick. I mean, the POB's out for this guy. He's non-existent through the first 2 games of the season. And I love Hassan Reddick. I respect the heck out of him. But once Hassan Reddick comes back to normal Hassan Reddick, if that is the thing that he kind of gets back to from 2022, this front four is going to be even more dangerous than it already is and make life a lot easier for guys on the back.
No doubt. Yes. That I'm totally with you on that. I've been thinking the same thing ever since Desai's presser too. And he mentioned it, right? I mean, he referenced it saying like Desai, or for as far as Reddick out there, I mean, he is getting a little bit more focused. He's having some chips and some schemes that are going towards him. So possibly that's helping some other guys. And, all credit to Josh Sweat, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter, because they've been playing like beasts. And Fletch for that matter. I mean, he was a little bit banged up from the last game, but still, those guys are taking advantage of it. It is something to do with the injury, the thumb. Something's probably causing that.
But is it,
I don't think it's. I was going to say that. It's to what magnitude, right? Like, I don't know. As a pass rusher, yes, you want to be able to use your hands, I'm sure. So it's probably a little bit of an effect. But I do think that there's something with the scheming because, or at least something I'd like to see differently. Who knows if it actually, proves to be successful. But, we heard all throughout the offseason or all the way leading through training camp of, hey, look at these different schemes and the formats that Desai has. He's got Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn on the same side, and he's got a swoop scheme or having a different, trying to do stunts and things like that. We really haven't seen too much. I mean, there's been a little bit, but for the most part, it's, hey, line up your 4 guys. And granted, we have great pass rushers, so you don't necessarily have to do that. But it would be interesting to see a couple different times just to throw a defense off. It's a shortened week coming away from the opener, so maybe you don't do it against Minnesota. But you got extra time now. It would just be interesting. And he did say it's my job to figure out ways to put him in better positions, to align differently, scheme away from the offensive pass protection. So I don't know. I would be surprised. Again, that's probably similar format as far as the slot goes. If we're sitting here a week from now and we still say, well, some of the other pass rushers got pressure, but Hassan sure didn't, then, okay, there's a little bit of a concern, regardless of the injury that he has. I think that you need to see, but I think you will see something different on Monday.
Saw a couple of comments here. Tony saying 70-plus sacks isn't happening again. We shouldn't be expecting it. That's true. And listen, they had 10 sacks of Carson Wentz in week 3 last year. I mean, 70 sacks should have really been 66, 64. I mean, 70 is a massive, massive number. Mm-hmm. The odds that they were going to duplicate that were very, very slim nonetheless. But they should still be a lot higher up than they are right now. I mean, they should be a top 5 team in terms of sacks and at least pass rush win rate. I know they're doing pretty well internally, but from the defensive tackle perspective, but it needs to be a lot better. Myron Perez says, since Reddick is dealing with a thumb injury, why would not put Nolan in, have Reddick come in third and long plays? It doesn't work like that, right? If Reddick is good enough to be there in terms of the first snaps, then he's good enough to play. And Nolan Smith clearly is not ready. Clearly, Derek Barnett is having a lot more success. Josh Sweat obviously is having more success, and they think that Reddick is more dangerous than Nolan Smith. I think Smith is going to take a while, and that was always my expectation. Whether it's middle of this year, end of this year, year 2, he will get good. He's just not ready right now for them to give up Derek Barnett snaps, who has had some decent pressures. They didn't have a sack yet, but decent pressures versus a rookie like Nolan Smith.
True, that's true. He has. He's had his moments. It's a little bit surprising, I guess, not to an extreme, but we haven't seen him more than 2-3 snaps in each game, if that he comes onto the field. So I hear you. I support Nolan Smith just about as much, if not more, than anybody else. So I would like to see him out there. But I do understand, and I agree that from what you've seen so far, it's a very limited sample size. But there's no qualms for me to say, well, Derek Barnett's getting more of the snaps, and so is BG for that matter, and so they're just rotating it that way. You've gotten a decent amount of pressure. To your point, we do need to see more from the sack front. I'm sure we're going to get into that, especially with the way that Baker Mayfield's played. But the first game is not as concerning to me by the fact that you only come away with, what was it, 1 or 2 sacks from that, or 1.5 sacks. So, I mean, you've got the numbers there. It's the opener. Mac Jones, the way they schemed is to really try to get the ball out quickly, so not as much. But the Vikings one, you got up early. That one feels like if the coverage scheme could be a little bit better, if you had better coverage in that sense, you might have had a few more sacks. So it's always complimentary. And we know that. Everyone knows that. Desai mentioned it in the presser today. They have to blend and play well together. So sometimes it's like, hey, we're registering all these pressure rates. great. But if the back end can't hold up for more than 2 seconds, then, what are we doing? So
Right.
I don't know. Maybe we see a little bit of differences here, whether that means, you're matching up a little bit more man. I don't think that's going to be the case, but something to try to guard the back end a little bit better, because you need to, because we've seen, as the pressure rate suggests, I mean, the Eagles are starting to get home. It's just not quite. They're just a little bit short, and then the ball goes out. And most of the time that seems like it's to the tight end over the middle. And we know what happens with that.
Ron Hood said, talk about your view on Slay, and then I'll get to Ryan's super chat here. Listen, Darius Slay's still their best cover corner. He's just older, right? Everyone thinks when an NFL player gets to its peak, we think of that NFL player in that peak season for the rest of his career. This happened with J.J. Watt. I mean, literally, J.J. Watt had that massive, massive year a couple of seasons ago, and in our minds, we always think that's J.J. Watt. And when he doesn't perform to that season's level of J.J. Watt, it's like, this guy's washed, this guy's old, he's not good. We saw what Darius Slay had done 3 years ago, 4 years ago, right there at the real peak of his powers, and it's been a steady decline ever since. Now, is it a dramatic decline? No, this isn't Max Kellerman saying Tom Brady's going to fall off a cliff, but it's a decline. Right. He's still a great cover corner. He still makes big plays. He saw one, obviously, in the opener, the pick six, but he is not as locked down as he once was, but he's not the issue right now with the Eagles secondary. The issue is being banged up. The issue is they have young players there, and I think the issue is the fact Reed Blankenship wasn't out there against the Vikings made a big, big difference.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. There's a lot of other aspects. Yes, to your point, you could say Slay wasn't at the same level of the lockdown, and he admitted it. I mean, to his podcast there, as far as what Justin Jefferson was, or the different kind of headspace I guess he was in, is it was a revenge game. Jefferson said that before the game, so it's not a major surprise. We talked about it before that game, saying we expected Jefferson to not be limited like he was previously. So yeah, not as big of a shock. Although there are still concerns, like you mentioned. I mean, with the other areas that do need to step up. And question 2 from Robert Alessandri here is, he says, guys, the schedule will get tougher with better QBs, so I'm concerned about the linebacker and safety play, more so the linebacker. And that's a great question. Sure. We say, yes, it's early, trying to get your feet under you, establish something, some sort of sense of identity, and like Desai says, that consistency. But I mean, to Robert's point there, the better quarterbacks are continuing to be ahead. Now, you have a stretch where it may not be, what we're talking about, those premier quarterbacks, but we know the middle of the schedule certainly is. Where is the concern level? As we kind of started this talking about Jason Kelce, everyone's on edge. We know we're not playing as well as we should be. Where's the concern level for you, talking about that quarterback schedule and what the linebacker and safety is made of?
I don't know, a 6 out of 10. Panic is... It's too early, and I think Ryan's super chat fits in with this very well. He says we need linebackers, someone that can cover. These 5-yard posts and slants turn to 15-yard gains way too often. Had to get pressure on the quarterback and hit his last step in the drop, or hard to get pressure when he hits his last step of the drop and the ball's out. That was the Mac Jones issue. I think the Eagles' worst play that they can't defend right now are the deep areas across the middle of the football field. A couple of these 10, 15, 20-yard passes that have been a problem. But I think Sean Desai is trying to dial this thing in. I think it's way too early to panic and way too early to freak out about it. Have the Eagles looked good? No. Today, would you pick the Eagles to beat the 49ers or the Dallas Cowboys on the road, or even if in Philly? I wouldn't. Dallas' defense looks fantastic. Dak Prescott's been accurate. And Brock Purdy, honestly, we ripped Brock Purdy for everything that happened last year during the NFC Championship game. Brock Purdy looks legit. I picked him up my darn fantasy team, mainly because I had Aaron Rodgers, but still, those are two really good teams. Now, does that mean 6 weeks from now, 7 weeks from now, 9 weeks from now, 12 when we play the 49ers, or 13, whatever it is, we won't be able to match up? No, I think we will. I think Philadelphia has a better roster than both of those teams. They're just not in it right now to the point that they're dialed perfectly in, and they still have a couple of weeks to figure things out because the schedules we can talk about is not that difficult until you get to the Miami Dolphin game. So I'm at a 6. I definitely see what everyone's seeing. I'm not going to try and pretend like, oh, no, like we're fine, right? Everything's okay. There are clearly some issues, and you mentioned being the third worst team against the pass. That's an issue. They're number one against the run, though. Right? And they're one of the top rushing teams on offense. And Jalen Hurts is getting hit a lot less in week 2 than he did in week 1. Like, they're working on it, they're improving, and I'm not ready to give away the whole idea that this team is not going to be a Super Bowl caliber team or a playoff roster or the best team in the NFC just yet.
Yes, I agree. I'm with you there. I'm not ready to say sound the alarms. We're not a playoff team. We can't contend or anything like that. But I'm about in the same space. Robert says he's 7 out of 10. I'm probably about 7 out of 10 because the reason being that schedule and a lot of what you just talked about there. I mean, and it depends, right? There's certain quarterback levels. So we're not talking about everyone being a Patrick Mahomes level, but you just think about the Kansas City game and look at the defense right now. I don't care what the pass rush looks like, the way the coverage has played so far. And I know it's an overreaction from 2 games, but to take that with a grain of salt and say what we've seen, Patrick Mahomes is going to shred you. Like, there is going to be no stopping him. Now, again, it's only 2 games, so I do want to give the side the benefit of the doubt. There's also some injuries. Let's give Reed Blankenship a lot of credit here because the defense is very much different, as a lot of us know, when he's on the field. So assuming you get the health back, I think that 7 of 10 creeps back to maybe like a 5 of 10, a 4 of 10, but there's still a moderate level of concern just because scheme-wise, even when you had healthy bodies out there, you're looking at it going, man, the middle of the field is wide open. Like, this is a soft coverage. This is a take what you want because we're leaving it wide open. Still, very small sample size, so I'm with you. Right now, 6 of 10, 7 of 10 seems sort of about where I'm at as well. But, that difficult quarterback schedule especially, you got to get things figured out. That's for sure, especially with the pass coverage.
You're saying scheme, though, right? You're not saying it's player personnel. Scheme is the main issue because I think a lot of people are saying – right, if you invest in T.J. Edwards, we wouldn't have had this problem. I scoff at that. If you had signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, we'd be much better. Like, how much better, right? I mean,
I think you could make – yeah, I agree. To me, you might make a little bit of a difference. Players do make an impact, but so far from what I've seen, it doesn't really seem to matter. You got guys wide open as far as the scheme. So I think Desai's going to figure it out. Now, I will say the one caveat to that statement is I'm assuming James Bradbury's healthy and Reed Blankenship is healthy because that to me makes a world of difference. And I think everybody would agree with that. But like, if you don't have Reed out there and you don't have James Bradbury, as we saw, I mean, it makes life incredibly difficult. And it also exposes, a little bit of Slay because you're going to say, well, you're not getting any help. Sorry. I mean, you might normally require some, but we got to help these other guys. So with all that being said, yes, it's mainly the scheme, but still it's saying you got to have some health because if we're pressed into playing a little bit of the backups from what we've seen coverage wise, then that concern level certainly goes up.
Philadelphia travels on the road to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday night in a game that they are going to be heavy favorites. Most of the national media will take them. When the ESPN people make their pick before kickoff, it'll most likely say Philadelphia for 90% of their selections. But this Bucs team is good, and I'm curious how good you think they actually are. Baker Mayfield's never started 2-0. He's 2-0 right now. He looks leagues better than Deshaun Watson, the player the Browns got rid of him to go ahead and go get. I think right now, this is I'm not going to say trap game because it's too easy to say that, but this is a game that Philadelphia could overlook and very easily be in trouble, or they could be extremely focused and have a get-right game against a pretty decent offensive firepower-filled football team and kind of steer that offensive and defensive season back on track to where they could roll the Commanders and then go roll the Rams and then the Jets. I'm teetering on how to feel about this, but we both can agree the Bucs team that we saw whenever we were circling games in March or May, whenever the schedule came out, it looks a lot better than what we had really originally thought it would.
Sure, yes, definitely did. And thankfully for that case, I mean, from what we've seen early on, yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling with it as well. Just kind of thinking so far, still a little bit of time figuring out what the injuries are going to be like, but just from the headspace of where we're at, I like to hear Kelce saying the team is on edge. I mean, if we came away from it, just, they could say, well, we're good. We're okay. We're still working through things. But to say that he's on edge there or that the team is, I mean, that's a positive sign, right? Like you're going into it saying, okay, thankfully we can all self-reflect and it doesn't take much, but they know this. But to say, if we're not playing up to our level of football and you combine that with the coordinators, I think that they have also kind of semi-alluded to we need to make some adjustments. And, thankfully that's the case because they do. But I don't know, this Bucs team, it's a great question. I don't know. And I think everybody wants to know that. I mean, the Bucs, from everything that I've read and heard, they're fully believing it. They're saying, hey, everybody doubted us in the beginning. And I know that this is going to be a legit squad. Devin White doesn't want to leave anymore. So that's saying maybe something. I don't know. He's having fun playing with the defense now. So I don't know. I mean, they've got a great run stopping defense. I think this will be a true litmus test, really. I mean, you look at it and say, we're most likely not going to just run all over the Bucs like we did against the Vikings. Now, there's a chance we could, with the offensive line the way, but the Bucs really try to limit the rush defense there, or the running game, because they're second in the league. So you got the first in the league and the second in the league. Probably not a great running game for either team. So this says, you know what, Jalen, Brian Johnson, you got to dial something up. You got to be sharp, because the only way, or the main way I think that we have success in this game, is open up the passing attack, because that's where you're gonna have to attack them on the defensive side, or on the offensive side of the ball for the Eagles. But I don't know. I'm still kind of questioning, going, we've seen Baker Mayfield a number of times, and normally I would say, like, great, we're playing Baker. Like, he's going to throw a couple interceptions. He's going to get sacked. He's going to make some dumb decisions. But so far early in the year, and again, very early, but he's making a lot of great plays. He hasn't turned the ball over as far as an interception. Has he had a fumble, or I don't know if he's turned it over at all, but he's played really well comparatively, and he's got some weapons. So, I mean, like we're seeing in the comments, I mean, it's going to be a test, because you're not going up against, slouches. We didn't last week either, but it's another receiving core of saying, all right, you got to guard Mike Evans. You got to guard Chris Godwin. The tight end, and K. Dotton's not necessarily T.J. Hawkinson, thankfully for that, but still the middle of the field. I mean, it's no secret. Every single team can easily look at this and go, well, that's where you want to attack, because so far they haven't been able to shut it down. So I'm with you. I don't really know what to make of it. I think that it hopefully is a get right game, and it doesn't seem like they're going to look ahead, look past the Bucs. That's for sure. It's a Monday Night Football. Why doesn't everybody just line up their, hey, let's acknowledge, our legend or great, because the Patriots did it and the Bucs did it. And, maybe every team's going to do it now, but the Bucs doing Rondé Barber. So who knows? But I think they're not looking past it. I definitely think that.
It's a good litmus test for the secondary, but you mentioned it in passing there. This should be a Jalen Hurts game, right? Jalen Hurts had a couple of games like he had the first 2 weeks of this season last year. We always go back to the Colts game, right, where he didn't look that good. You go back to the Commanders game that they lost. He threw an interception in that one. Didn't look that great. But he also had games where he ran the football crazy good, like against the Green Bay Packers, and games where he threw the football extremely well, like against the Titans and the Steelers, and against the Dallas Cowboys in that first matchup. This feels like the night on prime television, in prime time, on national television, where Jalen Hurts goes for 3 touchdowns, 3 total touchdowns, maybe 4. He throws for over 250, maybe close to 300 yards, and has his quote-unquote get-right game that kind of reminds people of who he is. That's what you're hoping for, and that's what you're expecting. I would love to run DeAndre Swift for 178 yards every single week, and they're going to try, and they definitely should, because you establish that run, and it's very hard to beat this Eagles team, not only from behind, but when they're running all over you, especially defensively. But if they can't, maybe this is going to be the week where Jalen Hurts starts to kind of get back to 2022 Jalen Hurts, because we've seen glimpses of it. I mean, a couple of throws in that Patriot game and a couple of throws in the Viking game where you go, there it is, but we need to see 4 quarters of it, and hopefully this is going to happen Monday night. So we'll see. It's going to be very, very interesting. See a couple of comments here. Tracy Ann says the Bucs have generally had a good defense. Baker's playing pretty well. The biggest factor is their last game was the oppressive Florida Heat. Players playing at night will definitely help. Yeah, heat, mile high, altitude, these things can have effects, but it shouldn't be a big deal. Like you said, it'll be much cooler. It's going to be clear so far, hopefully, on Monday night. Shouldn't be an issue.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah, it's a good point. It always plays a factor if you're playing a day game. But yeah, as far as just heat wise and the team being good, I think it'll be all right from that standpoint. But the question again, it becomes, I guess, who all is going to be available, and I'm assuming we're going to get the injury report beginning tomorrow, and then we'll start getting the updates from that side. The curious part to me too, and I feel like there's not going to be a lot of, I don't know, surprises, if you will, in terms of the injury report. I would assume that Reed Blankenship is going to be good to go. He's got an extra, kind of linked with the mini bye, so to speak. James Bradbury, like we mentioned, Kenny Gainwell, I would think that he is going to be. Who knows? Really, I haven't heard as much on him. But then the one to me that it hasn't been talked about a whole lot since the Vikings game, and I don't know if it matters a whole lot, no offense to this, but Quez Watkins and his hamstring injury, that could be more significant than what we give some credence to, because it happened in the Vikings game. He gets ruled out, but there's a lot of injuries that we've experienced so far, obviously. But we haven't heard much at all. And then all of a sudden, Britton Covey is signed today to the active roster. Now, you had to do something, but you really didn't. Like, you could have had one more game with Britton Covey being elevated from the practice squad. So the fact that the Eagles did that kind of makes me think that Quez is for sure going to be out. And the question would be how long. So I'm interested to see once we get that official report of what that looks like. And I would assume Covey's going to be the punt returner. I wouldn't mind seeing someone shake up, because I don't just love that option. But also the other question, or the other point to bring up there is, you know what? Quez only had 2 catches for 17 yards. So you haven't lost what you've done so far. Does Oz end up presenting another factor in that too? I mean, is there something that we can see from it? I mean, I don't know. It's a good question.
We haven't seen him. Does he have a catch? He has 1, maybe? The guy's been non-existent. But at times, the passing game has been non-existent. I mean, Philadelphia leads the league or second in the league with 12 3-and-outs. I think the leader is the Steelers with 15. Like, they have struggled to move the football. And I think A.J. Brown, we can talk about that for a second, his whole scuffle on the sideline, which, Nick Sirianni said was a 2 out of 10 on the, drama scale, not a big deal. I think A.J. Brown is frustrated at the lack of, creativity in an offense that should be throwing it up and down on every single team that they play. They're too good. They have too many weapons to go 3-and-out. I think A.J. Brown's frustration boiled over a little bit. Totally fine in my opinion. I have no issue with what he was doing. I mean, come on. You get frustrated. He's a receiver. He wants to get his passes. Now he's probably going to have a massive game on Monday night. But they should be able to throw the football a lot better than what they have done so far. And I think, again, the hope is that it's only week 2 and not week 12. If this was week 12, we would have been panicking for the past 8 weeks. But it's week 3, and it feels like it's going to be okay.
Yep, I agree. It's early, to your point. There's a lot of things that can happen now, so I'm not super worried about it. But yes, I'm interested to just see a new wrinkle, and also if we can get Dallas Goedert involved. There's a number of elements we would love to see. He did have 6 catches last game, which I guess would be somewhat of a win. But it was like 22 yards or something. He did nothing there. So maybe he can get a few more aggressive targets or something that's going to be more productive in that sense, because I absolutely killed everyone who, if anyone took my advice. Hopefully they didn't, when I said, hey, take the over 49.5 yards, and that did never get close. So I'd love to see Goddard do something too, because we haven't seen it, and it's been really surprising, quite frankly, especially from what we'd heard in training camp of this extra progression and his route running and working out with the receivers and all this. So maybe you get that going too. I would love to see that.
Literally the most important person in the offense. We have 1 Jalen Hurts. We have 4 running backs. Let them take the beating, says Ryan Grebe. How would you split carries? Like, let's say Gainwell is healthy. And you made a good point earlier. They haven't told us anything about anybody. But we've not gotten any sort of Gainwell rib injury update. And it feels like Frank Blankenship's going to be healthy, but we have no idea either way. But let's say they're both healthy, right? How would you split carries? Because I think Dave Spadaro said on someone's podcast yesterday that it's still running back by committee. They're going to go with a hot hand approach, which... it's fine, I get it, but sometimes you watch Philadelphia not go with the hot hand approach, right? They keep giving the ball to Kenny Gainwell despite the fact that somebody else has the hot hand. Would you purposely split this up 60-40 Swift? Would you go 50-50? How would you handle the running back situation after Gainwell was unimpressive in week 1, out in week 2, and Swift was very, very dominant?
Honestly, I would give the ball to DeAndre Swift as many times as you can. So I don't know that I would go into it saying, hey, it's going to be 60-40, it's going to be 70-30, whatever you say. I would just go into it being like, you know what? Our RB1 is DeAndre Swift, and he's going to get the ball like a regular RB1 it would.
Right.
If he does experience some issues or he just seems to be off or, whatever, then all right, we can switch up or have Kenny Gainwell come in there. But otherwise, I'm sorry. Like, I know it's just one game, but Agent Zero proved more than enough to me, and I think to a lot of people, to say he's too dangerous when he's on the field. And Kenny G presents, some problems. Sure, we've seen playoff Kenny, we've seen what he can do, but honestly, to me, it's more of a spell back to have him come in there whenever the defense is gassed or tired, or you kind of already moved the ball several times and get him in there. But Gainwell's made some good plays, but what DeAndre Swift was doing, I've not seen Gainwell do consistently enough to go, yeah, you could do it a 50-50 or maybe a 60-40. I think you're missing out. I think you're losing out if you take DeAndre Swift off the field. If for nothing else, if he's tired or he's injured. Other than that, I'd say get him in there and keep him in the game.
Swift has to prove that you can't rely on him or that he is not that good for us to be convinced that he deserves less snaps. Like, if they come out and they roll Kenny Gainwell early in this game and he's not producing and Swift's getting, a couple of carries but clearly less than Kenny Gainwell, fans are going to get pissed, and rightfully so. You cannot go off of a 1 yard, 1 carry, whatever it was week 1, to getting 28 and a $1.78 and going, wait a second, the offensive rushing attack looks a little different between these two games. What's the common factor? Oh, it's DeAndre Swift, and then immediately not give him the football. Yet it feels like it's something the Eagles would do. Like, I'm worried about it. That's why we're talking about it here, despite the fact that it seems like an absolute no-brainer to just give Swift the football and let Gainwell kind of be the third down back. So who knows? But it seems very obvious that Swift has proven, as Cool Range just said, that he has got to be the number 1 guy. And I hope that, offensive coordinator Brian Johnson, who's going to be under a microscope again on Monday until he completes an entire game, Nick Sirianni, who's the mastermind behind the offensive system, they have to prove to us that he's not worthy of being the number 1 back, because what we saw in week 2 is that he is the number 1 back, 100%.
No doubt. Yes. He's absolutely the number 1 back, and credit and kudos. We know this, but to the O-line, because it's a more difficult matchup against the Patriots. So we could say that, But yeah, I mean, Kenny Gainwell didn't do as great, and the Dolphins, I mean, every game's different, but Raheem Mostert had 120 plus yards and a
Yeah.
couple touchdowns against the Patriots. So if you can run against the defense, now it was just week one, and maybe you're figuring some things out. But I'm with you. Yeah, we saw enough from DeAndre Swift to say he's RB1. Of course, we got comments. T215 Philly says you need a power replacement for Swift. I mean, yeah, I guess you could argue that, would you want to see someone else or power to complement to Swift?
Right.
I mean, Gainwell's not going to be that. We know that. And Boston, yeah, I mean, he had some good runs, but you're not really saying that he is from the power replacement. But is Penny that guy? Is Rashad Penny going to, because so far we haven't seen hardly anything. He got 3 carries in the game against the Vikings, and he was inactive against the Patriots. So it's the most curious and strange thing to me to see the lack of involvement, especially given the injuries here. And I thought we'd see something from Rashad a lot earlier, or at least some more involvement. I understand not really giving him a whole lot of cut touches because Swift was, on another level against the Vikings there. But, if Gainwell for some reason can't go this week, and you do have Swift out there, he's not quite as productive, maybe you see a little bit more. But if we go another week and you say, well, Penny's basically doing nothing, then I don't know. That's a little bit alarming, maybe a little bit more than that, to have Penny, who we thought you might see come in the fourth quarter and kind of take it to the defense that's tired. Whereas it's like, he hasn't done anything really. He's hardly gotten on the field.
It's very true. It's very true. For whatever reason, they don't trust him. They don't think he's good enough to deserve more carries. I don't know what it is, but it is crazy, especially this last game where, yeah, Swift was dominating, but they didn't really want to roll with, Rashad Penny hardly at all. Okay, well, he's getting the Trey Sermon treatment and getting it pretty strongly through the first 2 weeks of the season. Speaking of DeAndre Swift, you, on your channel, you're giving away a signed DeAndre Swift mini helmet, correct? And you have a people already in the final round. Explain what's going on here. Let's get that drawn.
Absolutely. Yep, we are going to do that drawing. So I did just one of the videos. I was like, hey, let me know what the first touchdown score is for the Eagles. So I started actually on week 1 thinking we'd have a winner. And then, of course, Darius Slay has the pick 6. So that kind of ruined it. But it was a little bit different than, your typical traditional betting. So some people might say, hey, wouldn't that count for a defensive score? So it was pick the specific player, pick the yardage too for the touchdown score. But then in week 2, first Eagles score, not too much of a surprise that Hurts 1 yard gets picked by quite a bit of people. So Jalen Hurts being the first Eagles touchdown score was 10 different people had won it. So yeah, I've got the spinner here, and we were going to spin for that. And then the winner gets a DeAndre Swift autographed helmet. So that thing will be shipped on the way as soon as I get that information. So should be good to go.
Speaking of which, I think it was delivered today. The person who won the Jalen Hurts t-shirt jersey, that got delivered today. We sent that out a couple days ago. So everyone should be having and getting their stuff. And a lot of the jerseys came in. I don't think the Kelly Greens have gotten into our other 2 winners there, but we're definitely, giving us away. And obviously tickets. I mean, the guy who won both the tickets has already gotten himself set up for the Chiefs game. So, lots of giveaways. We'll do another giveaway probably during the Monday night game. So go ahead and subscribe and stay tuned for that as well. Could be a bunch of fun. All right, let me know when you have that spinner ready. Let's spin that here. There it is. If you like, I can go ahead and throw it up. Okay, let's see. So these are the finalists. Again, it's from Josh's channel. If you haven't watched the show, these are the guys who have a chance. Go ahead and spin it.
All right, here we go. We got 10 guys, equal chances. So who gets it?
Spinner wheels. It's staple.
And it is.
Oh!
Jake. I think that's how I say it. Two times. Correct.
Winner.
All right. There you go. Jake, let me know. The email is in the description. So send me an email or on Twitter at the PHI special. Just DM me there. But either way, and I'll also have a video tomorrow. So if he doesn't catch it, I'm not sure if he's here. But let me know. But congrats. You will get the DeAndre Swift autographed helmet.
Sick.
Congrats to you.
There we go.
Okay.
Let's see if I get myself back on screen. There we go. Oh, we're on the wrong side. Okay, congratulations. We always get to do giveaways. Always fun there. Let's go to some comments here as we keep rolling along. Second half of the show. Darlene says the first 2 games Hurts is an accident. Okay, that's... We need to hope, okay? There is 10% of every Eagle fan who's worried that we're getting the Carson Wentz treatment from Jalen Hurts. Whether you believe it or not, you feel it deep down. I love Jalen Hurts. I think he's fantastic. I don't think that that's the case, but 10% of me is a little worried. We need to see that one Jalen Hurts game where he takes over, he dominates, he hits his throws, doesn't have a boneheaded interception like we saw early in the game against the Minnesota Vikings. Give us a complete game. That'll calm so many people down and flip this whole narrative that Dallas's defense is going to roll Philadelphia. Because you look in the comment section, people saying, are you worried about Dallas? You watch the national media, people are saying Dallas's defense is the best we've seen in years. That can all be true. But A, we haven't seen a complete game from Jalen Hurts, and B, the Cowboys haven't played anybody. They played nobody. They got the Jets at the worst possible time to play, or to play the Cowboys, to be in the Jets. And they played Daniel Jones and a horrific offense that made a comeback against the Cardinals, but it's Jonathan Gannon. What did you expect? They're trash, right? Dallas is not going to play anybody for the next couple of weeks. It means a while until they have a decent matchup. Let's pump the brakes on Dallas. Let's pump the brakes on Hurts being, a little scary right now.
I agree, yes. And I'm not sure. I mean, Darlene may be trolling here, says the Monday night game where you're going to lose. So, but either way, I mean, yes, there's a little bit of a concern because Jalen, he hasn't looked up to the standard that we're hoping to see or that we've seen previously. But, it's early. There's the getting the coordinator thing figured out. I feel like this is more so, and maybe this is unfair. I don't know, but I feel like this is more so on Brian Johnson than it is for Jalen. Now he made the throw. He's the one who made the throw.
Sure,
he made the decision for the interception. It was terrible, but just his comfort level. There's something where he's kind of it feels like he's thinking a little bit more than he should be. He's not just reacting. He's not kind of going with the offense. Maybe there's some uncomfortability with the play calls or just with the setup there. And you're just kind of ironing things out. So I do expect him to get a little bit better. But also, I mean, to your point with Dallas, yeah, I've made the same comment before. It's like, cool, the defense looks pretty good, but when you don't play a quarterback, that makes a huge difference. And the fact that, like you were talking about, I mean, Danny Pennies, as I like to call him, he played terrible, and the Giants are not that great in my opinion anyway, but they played extra awful on that first game. And then you go up against the Zach Wilson. So, hey, if you could do this against some stellar competition, do it against a better quarterback and look good, all right, maybe we'll give you a little bit more credence. But so far, it's early in the year. I'm not super concerned or worried. And like we were talking about earlier, early sample size, sure. If you want to say they're a little bit up in front of the Eagles, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to argue tremendously on that. I'm going to say, all right, fine. It's early in the season. We have a lot of things we got to figure out, and we got to get healthier. But other than that, I'm saying this team is going to be okay. I'm not at a panic level. I'm not at a freak out moment. We just got to take a little bit more time, and I think that they're going to figure it out. I do think you see that Jalen comfortable. I think that he's going to have a little bit more fun. I mean, I don't know. It's been a little bit of a closer game, but correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't seen so far any sort of really swagger or fun or just, hey, they're going out there playing ball moments like we saw last year. And maybe that's because it's so early. But, even up 27-7 against the Vikings, it didn't look as much like a Jalen, going to pose for the crowd or pose for the coaches or anything like that. So it still just feels like they're figuring things out. But I'm not too concerned.
Cowboys have Cardinals next week. 3-0. Then New England, maybe, you get a Dak playing a better defense, sure. But then at San Francisco, I mean, you get a Sunday night primetime game followed by,
that's the big one.
Staying on the West Coast against the Chargers offense. That's when you're going to learn a lot more about the Dallas Cowboys. And the same thing goes for Philadelphia. The Rams will be a good matchup. I think that Washington Commanders are better than people think. Eric Bieniemy, someone I've doubted in the past, has Sam Howell in that offense scoring points. And they came all the way back from way down against Denver and won that football game. So, it's going to be interesting when both these teams start playing some complete teams, because neither of us have played a quote-unquote complete team just yet, because the Vikings defense isn't that good, and you can make the case that the Mac Jones-led Patriot offense isn't that good. Same goes for the Cowboys playing two bad offensive teams, so, it is what it is. Donatello Dragon checking in. What up, Donatello? He says, hey, fellas, just got off work. Hope all is well. I hope all is well with you as well. I hope you're on the West Coast and not working until 7:40 p.m. on the East Coast like I am doing right now, so
that would be brutal.
Should be fine. We appreciate you though, Donatello. I think he was one of our Kelly Green jersey winners, right? I think he was.
Right on. Got you down.
Cool. Speaking of which, we have bought our first Eagle tickets of the year officially.
There we go.
We are going to the Eagles-Dolphins game, and we're both bringing our significant others. That's going to be fun. That's going to be very fun.
That is going to be a blast. I'm looking forward to it. Kelly Green game.
Yes.
I mean, getting to see Philly. Sandy has not experienced Philly at all yet, so that's going to be a blast. Maybe go try some cheesesteaks and go look at some other stuff, but then also taking a Sunday night football game. Speaking of, the secondary, if you want to talk about a matchup that's going to test you possibly more than any other, I mean, we'll get a good look, right?
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, That's going to be a little, as of today. Maybe I feel a little bit better about it, but as of today, that would be a terrifying matchup. If we were playing them come Monday night, I would be terrified.
Yeah, it's gonna
Not
be
gonna lie.
my fiance Paige's first time in Philadelphia, first time in any NFL game. She's never
There
been,
you
so
go.
that's gonna be a lot of fun for both of us to have your wife and my fiance there. Yeah, Super Bowl preview from the AFC perspective, I think the Dolphins are the best team right now. Chiefs are gonna figure things out as they are going to, but I agree that Dolphins game, which is gonna be fun to be at, but it's gonna be a little stressful and a little scary in a primetime game. Very curious what the weather's gonna be like in Philadelphia on October 22nd too. It could be very, very interesting.
I know. Yeah, could be we were talking about that as well. So you're gonna get a cold game, a rainy
Yeah,
weather. What that's gonna look like. Hopefully, it's just not a nice brisk. I don't know,
that'd
50,
be nice.
55, something like that. Who knows? But that's what I'm hoping for.
Jay Long said I was debating getting tickets to the Dolphins game, but don't want to see my boys get smacked. What kind of belief is that?
Oh, come
That's
on.
a lot of negative Nancy attitude right there.
We
Goodness
don't need
gracious.
that negative energy.
Come on, Jay.
I
What are we
understand
doing?
the concern, though, as of what I just said. I'd be terrified.
I do too.
Today, so.
I do too. Philly John says, "What's up, guys? Any shadow for Evans? What's KG's gear y'all wearing in the game? What Kelly Green gear? Oh, I was thinking about that. I think I might need to buy a Kelly Green jersey. I don't want to be the only guy without a Kelly Green jersey at the Kelly Green jersey first game unveiling, right? Like, you got to go get one.
You kind of have to, yeah. I'm in the same boat. I'm like, which one do I go ahead and buy, and Sandy also was thinking about getting one as well. So maybe we have to buy two of them. Actually, I don't know,
Might have
yes.
to.
Question is which one. I mean, I've already got the AJ Brown converted, and it just. I'm leaning towards, and maybe this is too easy of a pick, but I'm leaning towards the Jason Kelce because I have a history of every single player that I buy. They just tank. Like as soon as I buy
that
their
same
jersey,
history, they all get traded away.
Yeah, they get traded away, or they do terrible, or the career just goes to crap. So I don't know. I'm like, well, at least if I get somebody that's already been there for so long and is a legend, nothing's going to affect that. So that's what I'm leaning with, but I don't know. I have to see because the Kelce, as almost all of them are sold out, but the Kelce for sure is sold out. So I may have to wait.
We could get one at the stadium and then put it on and then walk in.
There you
go.
go.
We could do that as well.
Yeah,
I got T.O. Obviously, he was there for a year, but I bought a T.O. jersey. It was the first one I ever had. I got a Westbrook one the year before he retired in Philadelphia. I got a Shady McCoy one literally the Christmas before they traded him to Buffalo. I got Jordan Matthews right before I think he was cut. John Jackson before he was cut. And then I didn't get one for a while until Avonte Smith, and I felt comfortable with Avonte Smith. So
yeah. Maybe we don't rock that boat if that's your history.
Maybe I don't. Not getting a Jalen Hurts one. Yeah. Maybe a vintage Brian Dawkins or something like that. It'd be safe.
There you go. You can't mess
idea.
Can't mess that up.
Idea.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Let's see some of the other questions here. Where were we at? I'm trying to find this one here. I have tickets for the Eagles come to FedEx. Do we play at the Commanders first, or are we home? We're home. Okay, so we're talking about week 4. You're not going to the week 4 matchup. You're going to the one in week 8. It's crazy that you would knock out the Commanders games early though, right? I mean, you're gonna immediately go for week 4, turn around week 8. How do you view the Commanders this year? Are they a playoff team and a real threat in the NFC?
I don't know. I mean, it is. It's early. It's hard to tell. I mean, maybe with Bieniemy and what he has the Commanders. I mean, what is it, like 27.5 points or something average? Now again, in 2 games, you could make a case for anybody, I guess, for stats wise, or almost anybody. But I don't know. Maybe like Sam Howell made some throws. Is he the guy? Do you fully trust him? It's so early. You could keep just saying that as the same argument on that side. But as of right now, I don't know. There's a lot of like just kind of mid-level teams. I feel like there's not a whole lot that I could say, okay, for sure, playoff team. I mean, we know the immediates where, at least in my mind, it's like, okay, you got Philly, Dallas, San Francisco. Like those are the 3 that immediately come to mind and say that's a playoff team. But I mean, outside of that, like, I mean, Detroit had a win against KC, but do you believe that fully? They lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson for the season, which, we could talk about if we want to as far as implications for draft picks. But, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, or I guess may lose, I should say, may be gone for the season. We don't know officially. Torn pec, but we don't know how long. So, with that instance there, the Bears are nothing. Green Bay lost to Atlanta, so that division there, the Vikings are 0-2, and only one team's ever made the playoffs starting out 0-2. So there's just a lot of question marks for teams certainly on the NFC. I guess, you could say possibly. I feel better about Washington than I do for New York. I'll say that. Like if you're going to go with the Giants or you're going to go with Washington, I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
I'll pick Washington over them. I just don't know if I'm quite ready to say yes for sure. They're a playoff team.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I think, like most of these teams, nobody has had a real dominant win. I mean, look at the 2-0 teams right now. I get pulled up in terms of the NFL division standings here. We can go through them. Is the most impressive team so far, I guess, the Dolphins, right? Like if we're going to actually name teams that were super impressive, the Dolphins. The Baltimore Ravens have not been super impressive. They're the only two teams undefeated in the AFC, by the way. You come down here to the NFC, you can make the argument Dallas and San Francisco, but who has Dallas played, right? They played nobody. And San Francisco, they had all they could handle, literally all they could handle from the LA Rams this past week. And the LA Rams are missing Cooper Kupp, and they have, a much weaker overall roster than they had a couple of years ago when they won the Super Bowl. The Falcons are not an impressive 2-0 football team, despite the fact they're much better than Atlanta has been in a very long time. They could have lost both of those games as well, thankfully, living here in Atlanta. They did not. But in terms of impressive teams, the Bucs, maybe they've been impressive just because they weren't supposed to be good, but nobody
We'll
sits
see.
there and absolutely scares you, right? There isn't a team right now, minus maybe the Dolphins, and I guess you can make the argument the Cowboys defense and the 49ers overall, I say attack with Christian McCaffrey, but nobody has enough dominant wins under their belt. We're only 2 weeks for the season, no wonder, easy to say, for me to sit back and go, wow, we're, really, really behind any of these top teams.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. There's not enough of a track record, let alone to say, again, have we seen enough impressive wise? Who knows? It's early, but I think by default, like we've been talking about, I think you say San Francisco, you say Dallas, they've been there, they have the pieces. Yes, can Dallas get past the divisional round? I mean, prove me wrong, right? Like show me that you can. But as far as just getting the playoffs, I think it's Dallas, San Francisco, Philly, and then to your point there, I don't know. There's lots of question marks. I mean, do you believe in a 2-0 New Orleans team? I don't, but they're there, so you've got question marks too. I mean, is that a possibility? It's interesting that division, right? Because you have you've got the Bucs, you've got Atlanta, and you've got New Orleans as all 2-0 teams. That's early start, but that's kind of surprising. I don't think that we'd expect to have three of those teams being undefeated at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that they are undefeated, and yet none of those teams are scary. New Orleans does not look good offensively with the Derek Carr addition. They've not looked like a team that is going to wreck you with Michael Thomas and Chris Olave. It's been kind of like, they miss Alvin Kamara, and defensively they're okay, but nothing really freaks me out. And Atlanta they're running the football well, and I think Arthur Smith finally has some things going. But you trust Desmond Ridder to beat you in a shootout? No. Nobody does at this point. No. What are you going to do? Tony says, Thomas and Josh, where are you guys from? Appreciate your dedication to the birds. Keep grinding. I'm a military brat. So my dad was in the Air Force. So I was born in Vegas and then moved every 2 years until my junior year of high school. And then we retired in Texas. So Texas, I guess, is kind of where I'm from, even though I live in Atlanta right now. And that's where I met Josh at Baylor.
Yes, sir. We did. Met at Baylor. I'm born and raised Dallas. So I, behind enemy lines, but I somehow escaped the odds and managed to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan. So that is with the rest of my family just being Cowboys fans as well. So
I don't know how you did it.
I have shared that story before. It is a little bit a longer story, but I'm happy about it. Obviously, there's a little bit of difference. I mean, my wife is from Wisconsin, so we got the go a little bit from her side. But she's starting to kind of come over to the Eagles side. I don't know if I should say this because in case her family sees it, but watching the Kelce documentary that helped. I mean, that kind of helped, and she's starting to be like, maybe I'll be an official Eagles fan. Like maybe I'll flip allegiances here. So I don't know if we're at that point yet. Just a disclaimer in case any of her family's watching, but just take it what you will.
I don't know. I think it might have something to do with the fact you've gotten like 20,000 subscribers in a couple of months just talking about one specific NFL team. That might also have a little factor in there as well. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. There's a lot of talking about Eagles, but
I don't think people actually know how you and I met here quickly. You and I, we go back a long time to when I was, I guess, I don't think I met you freshman year at Baylor because I wasn't working at the newspaper, at the Baylor newspaper. It was sophomore year is when we officially met, but you were a senior.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
Yep. I was a senior, and we were covering you were on broadcasting. I was sports writer. So yeah, that was the first time. And then I had more of an interest because honestly, I was like, hey, I just want to cover the football team. And so I had more of an interest to do the broadcasting, but there wasn't an opening. And so then I was
Right.
like, hey, can I tag up with you and like kind of just shadow or do some other stuff? But yeah,
Yep.
that was what year was that? That would have been
2015. Yep.
2015.
And I
Wow, that is
remember very specifically, we had just started kind of talking more when we were working in the Lariat offices together, the Baylor newspaper, and you were going to go to cover the K-State game in Kansas State against Baylor, and I tagged along with you, and we drove through the night in your old car to K-State, got there, covered the game, then drove back through the night, and you
wild
started
times.
driving. We stopped at a gas station, swapped places. It's like 1 a.m. or whatever. I started driving. I basically fell asleep at the wheel and like swerved or something. And I was like, oh, and then you're like, you want me to take back over? And I think I drove for like 30 minutes, and then you took over and drove the final 7 hours. It was ridiculous because I could not stay awake. It was pretty sad. It was pretty sad. Very
I'm
sad.
not gonna lie. That did scare me to death. But
yes,
you know, once you fall asleep, it is hard to get going. So I was like, all right, you know what? Hey, I'm awake. I'm definitely awake after that. But
yeah,
good times for the road trip.
That was crazy. Donto Dragon says Josh escaped a cult. Boomer Sooner boys. Josh, you know, growing up in Dallas, you did escape a cult, a big time cult. That was you were very, very lucky to not be a Dallas Cowboy fan because you would have had years of your life watching them be mediocre, and instead of years of your actual life watching them go to 3 Super Bowls and almost win 2 and win 1. So, you know, what are you gonna do?
I would be. I'd be incredibly ignorant because every single year I'd be like, "This is our year. We're gonna do it." And, you know, thankfully I'm not. So.
Donovan Seward 5, he says, love that we're struggling. Early games create soft teams. Hard games create tough teams. The games only make us stronger. Hey, I love the positivity. That sounds good to me. And I agree. And we have to think back to the 2022 Eagles overall, right? The 2022 Eagles, we kind of have envisioned them now as this like really special football team that beat up on everybody and they never struggled. And you kind of go back to the schedule and you go, okay, they had some pretty good wins early on. You think about, Minnesota, the Washington game. They almost lost to Detroit. They almost lost to Jacksonville. Took it literally a field goal as time expired by Dicker the kicker to beat Arizona. They didn't look that great against Dallas, at least in the second half of that game. Then you have the Pittsburgh game, the Houston game, but then they had lost to Washington. They barely beat Indianapolis. They gave up 33 to Green Bay. Like, this is not a football team that just ran over everybody. Like, we forget. Now, we think back to the last couple of weeks of the season in the postseason where they blew out, the New York Giants and San Francisco and put up 35 points against the Chiefs. That's the team that we envisioned from 2022. But the team from 2022 was by no means perfect. And even when Jalen Hurts went out, which I know was an issue, they went, 10 points in a loss to New Orleans? Like, it was not a perfect team that dominated everybody like the 2017 team did. That team truly did seemingly dominate every single team that they played. The 2022 team was probably better statistically, at least on paper, but they still struggled at sometimes. And the fact that Philadelphia 2 weeks in, they are 2-0. They've struggled a little bit here, dash there, interception by Hurts here, 7 passing touchdowns leading the league. I think that we can calm down a little bit with people saying that we're going to get run over by the better teams on our schedule.
Yeah, we can pump the brakes just a little bit. I agree. You could take a look at it, and it's hard in the moment, right? I mean, like it's easier to look back and go, okay, if you try to think through the season or if you to get a little bit of flashback, yeah, there's that for sure. But in the moment, it's hard sometimes to go, yeah, we could take some positive with it. Are we playing up to the level we should be? No, but at least the team realizes that. And again, like we've mentioned multiple times here, it's like we're 2-0. You have 2 wins. A lot of teams don't. They would love to be in this situation, and teams that may have played a little bit better according to what their potential is, maybe don't have 2 wins. So we've got to win. We got both wins, and we're going to see some adjustments. The team for sure needs that, but that's the making of a caliber team. I mean, if you've seen the Kelce doc, if you watched any of the behind the scenes or the YouTube channels, the team is slowly growing. They're slowly getting better. They're finding their identity. It starts over every single season, even though a lot of the guys are the same. You can't just walk into it and go, okay, hey, they were just going to easily waltz through and make it to playoffs and make this thing happen. So it's going to continue building. We're going to continue on that rise and get playing better. I'm not too concerned. There are a couple areas like we've been talking about. We got a couple questions here. Michael Duhan says, could Sydney play slot for us? I know that's been the talk of who the slot is going to be, who's taking over for Avonte. We talked about it earlier with James Bradbury. We didn't get into Sidney Brown, and I know that both of us would like to see him. I've mentioned, several times it'd be great to have Sidney Brown out on the field. We haven't really seen it for the most part. He's played a couple snaps, but curious, I guess, just to hear your take. I've got mine, but curious to hear yours first. Could Sidney play slot for us, and maybe more importantly, should he play slot for us?
Man, I saw that stat I did on my show today that he did play, some snaps at nickel in college at Illinois. Like, he is not completely void of nickel experience in his past. But again, I go back to the Eagles are scared to death of rookies making rookie mistakes and costing you football games. And I think that putting Sidney Brown in the slot where he has potential to go one-on-one against Mike Evans or Justin Jefferson or Hunter Henry, right, in week one, has them a little bit weary. And so while I'm fine with trying it, I think they should try a bunch of these things. But I think Eagle fans need to understand there's 6 days of the week they're not playing an NFL game. They're practicing. And sure, during 11-on-11s during training camp, during 11-on-11s during practices during the week, they've tried this. And if it was significantly better than moving Bradbury to the slot or trying out, or Mario Goodrich and keeping him there, they would have done it, right? I mean, come on, like, they would have done it. And so they're not stupid. And I think that we get this kind of, twisted sometimes as couch quarterbacks, looking at, replays of games and from a TV camera view during a slow replay of, well, why didn't you do that, right? It's so obvious. Why didn't you do that? I don't think they're stupid, but I think if they really, really thought Sidney Brown would make a difference and be better than Mario Goodrich or be better than, Terrell Edmonds, they would put him out there. He's a rookie. It takes time. He'll get playing time when he's earned and deserves that playing time, and I think the Eagles are doing the right thing with him so far.
I agree. Yes, I've talked about it similarly. Again, I would like to see Sidney out there on the field.
Sure.
I'd like to see him get some action, but I agree in the sense of he could play the slot. I don't think it's impossible, but like what you were alluding to there, I mean, it's not like they're not trying. It's not like they're like, oh man, what a novel thought here, a great idea. We've never considered putting Sidney at the slot. They're trying every single option. We've seen all sorts of stuff or heard some rumors, but even the ones you haven't heard, that doesn't mean they're not trying it. So I think that it's not the best option. I agree with you too. We heard of Sidney Brown even trying to get some safety reps, and as far as first and second team reps early on, he wasn't getting those just because he needed to learn the playbook. And he admitted, he's like, I showed up and I didn't know a thing. There was nothing that I understood. And so it takes some time just to learn that position. But if they're mainly focusing on safety, not that it can't move over to slot, but still it's just another wrinkle to say, okay, now you got to learn the defense here. You got to learn the defense from the slot position. And a lot of times, like Desai mentioned, if you're the slot guy, you're getting the read on stack ups with receivers. You're the one to make that call. So it's just an extra phase to say, this dude's a rookie coming in, and we're already asking a decent amount of him to say, hey, learn what you can here. We need you to be ready if you have to go in. But then we want to try to, play you a little hybrid slot action there. I just think that's a lot. So they're probably avoid that as much as possible. If you had really significant injuries, hopefully, we don't. Maybe he were to come in there, but I would see a Mario Goodrich, maybe heck a T1 Mullen who got signed to the practice squad. Maybe if he gets elevated, we'll see in the next couple of days that he's elevated for the game. He's a potential, maybe a short-term option. I don't think that solves your long-term solution, but even adding some depth there if Goodrich doesn't play well or you have someone else. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that Sidney Brown goes at that spot as much as we may like to see it or would want to see him out there on the field. I just highly doubt it.
Brendan Weist says, are you more worried about the offense or defense? I think both would say defense and both would say covering the middle of the field, right? They need to clamp down on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I mean, Mike Evans can't go for $145 and a touchdown, and Godwin go for 98, on 7 catches. They need to show us that they're not going to get torched by an elite quarterback, because you have about 4 or 5 of them that you're going to face, over the course of the next, 10 weeks or something like that. Prove to us against what should be not as good of a quarterback in Baker Mayfield that you can slow down a passing attack and be a little more dominant.
Yes, I'm with you. That's my concern as well. I mean, we're hoping that we can see that. The question obviously is, will we?
Sure.
And I'll go and answer this too with because Michael Duhon followed up saying, who would you guys want to, or who would you guys put at the slot? Answering, not Sidney Brown, and I don't think that's likely. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think temporarily, especially against the matchups you have this week, James Bradbury, if he has to shift over, if it's a Mike Evans that moves in there, or it's a Chris Godwin, shift him into the slot and you put Joe back out there because he's had some plays. I would love to see Eli Ricks. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see that. I still feel like at this moment they're going to go, yeah, Joe gave up a lot of catches and he gave up a touchdown. It didn't look great, but I feel like they'll probably give him a go. But if he struggles early, then all of a sudden you say, well, let's get Ricks out there and put him in there. Now, I've heard the comments or seen the comments as far as, well, let's put Ricks there at the slot. But Ricks is more of an outside. And if you're going to have someone adjust, I don't think you want to say, hey, Ricks, you go try to play
No.
slot rather than Bradbury. Like, I'd much rather put Bradbury and say he's got a lot more knowledge and football IQ to go out there and potentially make that adjustment and play that position, even if it's temporarily. But I mean, to fully answer the question, I don't think you have a long-term solution right now. Maybe Mario Goodrich plays into that, but right now I feel like it's a little bit of a revolving door that we'll see depending on the matchup. So for this week, I'd say James Bradbury. Otherwise, I don't know. It kind of remains to be seen.
And remember, like, it's not like they didn't have a backup plan for Avonte Maddox's, paper thin injury body. And no offense, but he gets injured all the time. Zach
Yep.
McPherson, he was supposed to be the backup slot guy. He was supposed to come in at nickel right now. It should be McPherson. You drafted him, early-ish, a couple of drafts ago, and then he, of course, has the season-ending injury. So it's not like they weren't prepared for this, but it does feel like 2023 offseason is the time that you're going to go out and make sure you have that nickel guy. Whether you sign somebody in free agency with a nickel, experience, or you go draft somebody in the 3rd or 4th round who's more of a nickel cornerback who can come in and groom. Not sure what they're going to do, but they had an idea and they had a plan, and the plan got ruined because you shouldn't be on your 3rd nickel cornerback by week 3 of the NFL season. So
Sure, and it should be Isaiah Rodgers. I mean, to your point,
it
there,
should be him as well, and
assuming,
they will bring
he's
him
going to be
back.
back in next year.
Sure.
But yes, for this year, you hope to have a plan, but there's only so many backups you can go with, and unfortunately, we've just been bitten by the injury bug at the same position, and so now you're just sitting there going, well, who's it going to be? And I hope that they can find an answer for it, but that's going to be the main question, I think, as far as that coverage scheme, the middle of the field being open, and a lot of times the tight ends. There's a reason that if you're playing fantasy and you have your tight end playing against the Eagles, they have the number 32 next to him because the Eagles just allow tight ends to dominate. Very small sample size, but it's going to probably keep up for the remainder of the year. I would be shocked if all of a sudden that 32 goes down to like a 10. It's probably going to be towards the upper end. Right now, I would say it's probably just the goal of managing the situation as best you can, because I don't see it all of a sudden being like, wow, the Eagles are dominant with the slot corner position or dominant in terms of that coverage. So scheme-wise, if you can figure out some different things, but personnel, I think it's just unlucky, unfortunately, with the injuries.
Yeah, it does feel that way. Unlucky is kind of the feeling that I had there too. Okay, let's do about 4 or 5 more minutes, get some questions in here. If you have any more questions, let's wrap it up and let people go within their Wednesday nights. Is it just me or is everyone getting injured, says Brian? Everyone's getting injured. They were very lucky last year. And you're going to have these sort of injuries, right? And none of the ones they have currently on the roster are serious, whether it's concussion, whether it's ribs. Like, they're going to be fine. But, they definitely need to get healthy, and hopefully they will. Eagle linebackers stink, says the Lat Inferno. They've been torched by tight ends 2 games in a row. Nakobe Dean is out. We forget about that. He's supposed to be fixing a lot of those issues, and I thought Morrow played pretty good, and Zach Cunningham's serviceable. If they get Dean back, and Dean plays like Dean is supposed to, him and Cunningham, you can mix in Morrow and Christian Ellis whenever you need to, heaven forbid, they'll be okay. They just never emphasized linebacker. Never. Philadelphia's never emphasized linebacker, and just because they're going to struggle a little bit this year, still don't think it means how he goes out and drafts the number 1 linebacker in this upcoming draft class. It's just not how he does, and he's won Super Bowls by not doing that. So why stop doing what has already worked? So I disagree, but it's how he does.
That's true. It is. And we've actually got a question here, or maybe a comment from Vidat Safari saying, would it not be perfect to have CJ Gardner-Johnson right now? I mean, you could have did a shoulda, woulda, coulda, but at the same time, I mean, CJ Gardner-Johnson is most likely out for the season with a torn pec, which is oddly and strangely enough the same injury that Avonte Maddox had. So, and if he was on the Eagles, would he have gotten injured? Who knows? There's so many hypotheticals, but I don't think you could go down that road. That's the most ridiculous, because had he not been here and had we not had these injuries, we wouldn't be sitting here going, oh, how great would it be to have him? So, yes, he had some talent. He made some plays. The antics that he left with and what he said about Philly and all that other stuff, I'm over him, quite honestly. I think that before these injuries, that we wouldn't even been brought up. But I mean, I can understand. You look at it and say, oh, hey, he might have made an impact. But again, you could say, well, that's if he stayed healthy. So you could always play this guessing game, I feel like.
Shane Baker says, great show. Thank you, Shane. We appreciate it. We appreciate you watching. That. Michael says, this is it for Avonte. I don't see them picking up his contract. I mean, I could see them re-signing Avonte for dirt cheap, but knowing that you have other nickel guys, in your back pocket. Avonte, when healthy, is a good player. Right? But that's kind of, an oxymoron. Avonte and healthy, it's not really going together. So I can see them. Yes. And you pay him $2 million, heaven forbid? Oh no, that's a crazy cap space right there. Like, they could totally keep him. But yeah, it's tough. It's definitely tough.
Yeah. Did you see the
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, did you see the Justin Fields Chicago Bears dumpster fire today? Surely you did. I mean, just all
Did
the
you see
stuff going on,
the
but
defensive
the
coordinator
DC,
resigning?
yeah, I was
Holy
like,
cow.
man, it goes from bad to worse. I thought the interview
Jeez.
with Justin Fields calling out the coaches, of course, you have to save face. And so, if in case anyone didn't see it, I'm sure everyone's seen it by
Yeah.
now. But Justin Fields in the presser, he's like, "Hey, I feel too robotic, or been playing too robotic. I need to get back to changing things up, thinking less." And then they follow up a question. Hey, why are you saying that? What's causing you to think too much, maybe? And he says, "What coaching, or could be the coaching, something like alluding to that." Now,
Yes. Yes.
again, you say that, and everyone knows, I think almost everyone knows that you say that, and everyone's going to just take it and run with it, which is what happened. And then later, 30 minutes, an hour later, and I'm following this kind of on the back end on Twitter and catching up, but it was like 30 minutes, an hour later, they go to the locker room and he's trying to clarify the statements. Well,
Yes.
I didn't actually mean to throw the blame on the coaches, because I'm sure maybe his agent, or possibly he just looked on social media and goes, "Oh, that was the wrong comment to make." But that was the most terrible thing you could say, most ridiculous. The Bears are in just not a good way at all. And then I thought, well, it's not going to get any worse. And then to your point, yeah, the DC goes, "Yeah, I'm out. I'm done." So it's crazy. I don't know what to make of it. For one, on Justin Fields' side, you never say that. And for the comparisons of Justin Fields is going to be better than Jalen Hurts, he's Jalen Hurts 2.0, all these other comments, say what you will, Jalen Hurts would never say that. Even if the coaches were for sure wrong, he is the type of player that he's going to kind of take the higher road and wouldn't say that. But for Justin Fields in week 2 going, "Yeah, the coaches, that's probably, that could be what it was." I just felt like, you got to be kidding me. You really
It
just said,
also it also goes to show that just because you get a quarterback weapons doesn't mean he's gonna pop like Jalen Hurts did from year 1 to year 2 in a starting offense. All off season long, we heard, well, Justin Fields has more talent than Jalen Hurts. They brought him DJ Moore. They have Chase Claypool. They have this stable of running backs. They obviously are going to focus in more on the Eagles' overall offensive scheme. And what we've seen through week 2, there's not a lot of progression. So people who are a little worried about Hurts right now, we've seen him make that leap. They're just going to, slowly, hopefully get him back to being where he was, middle of last year, end of last year. It is crazy, though, that people were saying that Justin Fields, after not having any proof, started saying that he was going to be better than Jalen Hurts, who gave you a full season of proof. It was like, okay, this is James Jones, for instance, on,
yeah,
Speak. It was like, oh my gosh, like this is bizarre, but it's what they
yeah,
do.
yeah.
It's what they
You got
do.
to
Now,
talk about something, I guess.
Justin Fields can figure it out, but he's running out of time. And the Bears are going to have a top 5 pick next year, and they could easily spend it on Caleb Williams. They could spend it on, Marcus May, the quarterback out of, or Luke May. One played basketball, one played quarterback. I forget there of North Carolina, but
Yeah, Drake me.
Drake May. There you go. A lot of Mays there. The May who plays quarterback for North Carolina. There'd
Yep.
be some good quarterbacks this year, and the Bears have had bad quarterbacks for my entire lifetime, and they're not going to sit around and let Justin Fields stink it up for 4 or 5 years. He can do it for 2, get him out of there, move on. They'll get the Sam Darnold treatment that the Jets gave him and ship him somewhere else for a restart. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough.
That is
All
very,
right.
very tough situation. I, I,
We-
I don't understand that. Maybe the defensive coordinator was just not caring about it either. He's just saying, "All right,
I
I'm
saw a
gone."
tweet that said from some NFL reporter saying, "I'm praying that what I'm hearing about the DC for the Bears is not true in terms of, I guess, whatever happened."
Oh
So
gosh,
that
okay.
remains to be. Yeah, it sound
I'd
way
only
way
seen that he
worse,
resigned,
way
and
worse.
I didn't get a chance to look into it a little bit more. But
Yeah,
okay,
it sounded like he did something wrong, which allegedly.
mm,
So we'll see about that. But I don't know. It's not a good look for Bears fans. And again, it's why you
no,
gotta be grateful. You're 2-0. You win games however possible, and Philadelphia's sitting in a spot where they're still at top of the NFC, which
hmm
hopefully can continue on Monday night.
there you go.
All right, guys, we are out of time here on a Wednesday. Guys, appreciate the show. Be sure to subscribe to both. We've got plenty more content happening next couple of days here. We'll be live Monday night during the game. Be sure to go ahead and tune in, check us out. We try to have the best play-by-play broadcast for the watch party that possibly can happen on YouTube. And we have, again, plenty more stuff from both of our channels, so we appreciate you guys watching tonight. Josh Davis from Thomas Mott. We sign off. See you guys.
I will see you.